This clip is brought to you by Within You Supplements. No bullshit, no fillers, just great tasting supplements to help your performance. Enjoy this clip.
Do you think it's fair to maybe make the statement of like, if you're not well conditioned, if you're not in good shape, you're not in top shape, then your likelihood of getting injured might increase simply because you can kind of picture the athlete maybe being out of position.
Yep. Yeah. 100%.
Getting in compromising positions.
Yep.
Like my effort to go dive for the ball might be different than somebody else who's a little quicker and they're already, a couple steps, and they don't have to even dive for the ball. They don't have to go into the stands because they were a little quicker to begin with and just in better shape maybe.
100%. 100%. Yeah. I mean, we could talk openly about those ideas because that's not saying you will get hurt, but the odds of you getting increased risk of injury, the odds of you getting hurt are certainly higher if you're a deconditioned athlete, right? If you're not in shape, typically bad things will happen, right? And whether that's acute stuff or just fatigue breaks down kind of your movement strategy, right? So we'd call it kinematics. So as you fatigue, your movement quality would break down. And then over time, that can put you in risky situations, and that's where you get an ACL or something.
That's got to happen a lot on the court.
All the time.
Because you're up and down the court a lot, right?
Which is why you got to be in shape, right? And so if you play, you run, right? And that's the ultimate kind of motto. You want to be in shape because fatigue, they say fatigue makes cowards at everyone. Fatigue makes you worse at everything. So if you're really good at basketball, if you are fatigued, you're going to be not as good. And so no one can argue that being a better shaped athlete or more conditioned athlete would make you better at your sport, because even if you're Michael Jordan, if you're tired, you're not the best version of Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And so that sprinkles down across everything.
Yeah. So something like being stronger, it could be beneficial, but it also, if you are working so much on your strength that it makes you inefficient on the court, you can argue that you would be more fatigued on the court because you're not your movement pattern isn't efficient. So that's where it gets to be really sciencey and really interesting on your part, because you're dealing with these athletes. They already move really well.
Yep.
And you're like, shit, man, I don't know what's optimal for this guy. The guy's 6'10", 250 pounds. He came in here. He can jump like crazy. He can already move like crazy. What are some of the things that you kind of look at or look for? Like, do you kind of assess a person and say, well, at this stage, it's probably not even a good idea for this particular person to even mess with any squats because their movement pattern seems compromised somewhere. So let's work on something else.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's always an opportunity cost, right? So if somebody is relatively strong and you focus on making them stronger, even if that increases injury risk, we don't know if that's true. But what we do know is by you spending time making them stronger, you don't have time to focus on other things like making them conditioned or making them more mobile or focus on their injury kind of history. So I think you just have to balance all of that. And at some level, once an athlete is strong enough, and that's a whole nother debate of what's strong enough, but once we figure out like, hey, you're strong enough, we have to work on the other qualities because there's so many qualities to sport, especially basketball. As far as squatting goes in general, I mean, we modify everything, right? So like we might go with a Hatfield variation. So we might raise your heels up with a ramp. That's going to allow the knees to get over the toes. It's going to allow you to actually kind of bend and fold a little bit better. We might put your hands up to be supported, keep a more vertical trunk. And now that load is getting dispersed across the joints, predominantly the lower body. And that way we'll save the low back a little bit. And ultimately, that's the goal. I think it's not necessarily just to squat people, but find variations of squatting. Because to me, squatting is just a movement pattern.
How do we do this with the least amount of negative cost
involved?
Exactly,
right? And so many times when we say squat, people just think it's barbell back squat. Like, well, no, squatting is just a pattern of triple flexion, right? So as we go into this flex position of the ankles, the knees, and the hips, what's the best version of that for my athletes? And some of them, a back squat works. Some of them, a safety bar works. Sometimes it's a Hatfield. Sometimes it's a safety bar, or a front squat. Sometimes it's, hey, we really like this, but we don't like loading anything above the torso. So why don't we just put you in a belt squat? Or, hey, none of this works. Let's just put you in a leg press. So we have so many options that we can use that I think strength coaches or coaches in general that think, well, squat means back squat. It's like, well, no, squat means pattern. And then find the pattern that works for you and your athletes. And if you have anthropometrics that allow you to squat, great. And if you don't, let's put a variation out here that works. Because ultimately the goal is just to strengthen the lower body for the most part.
So Power Project family, I hope you enjoyed this clip. We are on Discord and Reddit. We're trying to talk to you guys and build a community down there. So the links are in the bio. But remember, like, comment, subscribe, share this out with people so you can share the wealth of health. As cheesy as that fucking sounds. Peace.